What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Travis. Of course, this is TWA Motorsports, and today, yes, we are back on the Trans Am. And guys, here's the hope. In this video, we put this motor in and it stays, but we will see. I do have a new part that I was going to tell you guys about in the last video, but I ran out of time. It actually didn't come in, and that I said was a surprise for the top. Guys, here's what we've got. We have a brand new fast intake for this thing. So I know these things are relatively expensive, and in a boosted application, would the LS6 do a decent job? Yes, I think it would. But as of right now, we're wanting to run an NA. So I'm trying to get as much power out of it NA as possible. Got a pretty good sized cam. We got ported and polished heads. Look, it only made sense to go with a fast intake, in my opinion. Like I said, I really would like to boost this thing down the road, maybe a Pro Charger or something like that. Still have the turbo kit sitting over here. It hasn't sold yet. Guys, reach out to me if you're looking for a turbo kit. But anyway, we need to get the old intake off. I know feels like we just put this thing on. But which fast intake did I end up going with? Well, guys, after talking with my tuner, I actually went with the 92 millimeter. I know they make a 102 now, but the 92 makes a little more sense on a 346. Technically, this is still a 346. It may be a 347. I don't think they had to hone this or bore this any, so I think it's still what they would consider a 346. Some would call it a 347. Does have forged pistons, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to go to a 102 unless you have more cubes, and we don't. So there's another reason why, guys, is your factory fuel rail will fit on the 92. It will not fit on a 102. You have to use a different fuel rail. And I didn't want to go through all that. And like I said, my tuner recommended the 92. I will list this in the description down below. But the very first thing we need to do is we need to pop this one off, which means we need to just undo the harness all the way through. We'll get the 10 millimeter bolts out that hold the fuel rail in, and then we'll work on basically just getting, I guess I have to unplug the injectors, don't I? We'll unplug the injectors, but we'll leave the throttle body on. I'm planning on using this LS6 intake on the 6-liter that's going in the 55, although I don't know, we'll see. But I'm keeping this because this is a good intake. But let's get the thing off. Now, I told you guys in a video a while back, or at least I asked, you know, do you want to see more of the process of me actually working on it? You know, here lately it seems like I've been just doing the work and not showing you guys. I'm basically going through the steps, but I figured we'd do, you know, some of this, show you guys the process. So that's what I'm gonna do. I may not show you all of it, but we'll show you most of it. Got to get this harness out of the way. Man, I feel like we're moving forward at least. For the longest time, golly, I thought this thing's never gonna come together, but I'm feeling good about it now. We've got all the stuff on it needs other than this. This was really the last piece. I wanted to put the motor in the last video, but obviously that didn't happen. And I was thinking this was gonna come a little later than what it came. So I'm happy it's here now. Man, these things are stuck for not being on there very long. I'm hoping I don't have to take my dipstick tube out. I don't think I'm gonna have to get the intake off. I think we can work around it. Once we get all that done, let's undo the map sensor back here. Need to get this line off. There we go. And I think that's it. All right, now let's grab a 10 and get the fuel rail loose. Don't forget about your throttle cable. This is kind of just to keep your throttle cable out of the way. Once we got that off, should be able to pull this out, just being careful. There we go. We're gonna set this thing to the side, kind of upside down where it doesn't get anything in. Now we need to get the intake off, which is going to require, I think these are 8 millimeters if I remember right. Let's make sure. Yep, 8. You also may remember we used some ARP fasteners. I think that the new kit comes with it, or with that intake, but I may be wrong. And you're also going to notice that I'm going to take these off just the opposite way of the way I tighten them down. So I'm working my way from the outside in. I think we got them all. Let's lift them out of place. Ooh. These have washers on them, these ARP ones do. It's a little bit different. Drop the washer right there. Now we're going to lift the intake off. At least that's the plan. Oh crap. I've got some stuff zip tied back here I need to undo first. Now that I've got that cut, we should be able to bring this out. I'm hoping. Oh man, still got a couple things hooked up, don't I? Forgot I hooked the throttle body up. Okay. Got it off there. Now, here's the deal. For the fast intake, we have to take these bolts out because it will not work with the factory heads on these bolts. So we have to swap these out for the ones that come with the kit. So we're gonna grab those and get these guys out. And what I'm gonna try to do, guys, is take one out, put the new one in and torque it, take another one out, put the new one in and torque it, and so on and so forth. That way we don't have to go through the whole process. So let's get this guy out. This is a 10 millimeter. So we got that out. I wanna show you guys the difference between what we've got and what's going in. So the intake will be supplied with these, and you can see the difference in the head size. See that difference? So obviously it doesn't poke up as much and interfere. The downsides is it is a, looks like a hex head on that, and we'll grab a size and I'll let you guys know, but I want to torque this down to factory specs. These are a 5 millimeter, and guys, they go down to 18 foot-pounds. So I'm gonna put it in by hand, I'm gonna torque it to 18, and this is one of those processes where you guys kind of understand what's going on. I will show you, I'm not gonna show you me torquing them down or going through each one. I'm gonna start here, go here, 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 just like you would a head. I don't think it's that big a deal, but that's the way I have always done it, similar to bolting down a head. So just working our way down and out. So we'll get those done and torque down to the 18 foot-pounds. Once we got all those torqued down, I'm gonna complain just a little bit, and here's what I'm gonna complain about. This intake costs a lot of money, and it doesn't come with gaskets. I mean, come on. If you're spending, these things are like $1,200, $1,100. And look, guys, I don't know. I don't even know if I'm gonna be able to use the originals here. Yeah, maybe. These are a factory set that I actually robbed out of the LS6 intake. I think they'll fit. They're not the same shape as the ones that came out, but I think they'll be fine. It says in the book to use the fast ones. I don't see any issue with that. They're just not a square. See how the ones on the LS6 intake are squared? They're fitting in there fine. So I think I'm gonna attempt to use, I might do a little research here first, but yeah, I mean, that's kind of frustrating that But this thing comes sandwiched together. It's multiple pieces, so you can take it apart and port it. I'm gonna put it in the way it comes out of the box. And so it's separate pieces, and it comes bolted together. You see the bolts right here? They don't put one in the very back. They supply you another one, but I need to loosen that up after I get these in. But like I said, I'm gonna double check and make sure that those will work. I don't, like I said, I don't see why they won't, but we need to make sure of that first. After some research, yes, it's fine to use those. Let's get these off here. And guys, these are what you use to bolt the intake down if you'd like. We'll just have to see which one I like better. I mean, the ARP ones look good. These look good. I hate hex heads. I just never have anything that fits them the way I think it should fit. But here's what we need to do. We need to take this apart, and the upper shell should come off of the intake at that point, right? So let's get all these out, and then we'll see if we can get this thing separated. And you need to make sure that your seal is good, which I don't know why it wouldn't be since it's brand new, but guess you never know. Let's get this taken apart. And I went around these, I'm really picky about going around these intake gaskets like 3 or 4 times, making sure they're nice and even, they're not bunched up anywhere. And since they were a different shape, I really worked these corners where it's really curved, if that makes sense. All right, so now that we've got that loose, we should, well, actually guys, I don't know that we necessarily even need to take it apart. The seal looks good. I don't see the point. It looks to me like it's sealed really well. I'm not gonna take it apart. I think they do that for shipping purposes maybe. So let's set this thing in place. It's all sweaty because guys, it's so hot out here. Let's set it on there. One other thing though I will tell you, if you guys are using the older style, move my camera up a little bit. If you're using the older style LS1 coolant bypass, right? So you've got the H basically that connects to the front and the rear of the heads. You can't use that. Now we've engineered our own one. This was a 02 block anyway, so it didn't have that. But I have a crossover that we've made. I made a crossover in the back that's going to connect with the Y in the front, so we don't necessarily have to worry about that. But let's set this thing on here. The other thing is we need to watch and make sure we don't have any issues with clearance. You know what? I'm going to go over these heads one more time and clean those up before I do this. Now let's try. Of course, my injectors are right in the way. Woo-wee, that's a tight fit, guys. We're gonna have to, I'm hitting something. My coolant bypass I made, of course. Dadgummit. Okay, well, that's okay. It's gonna have to come back, which means my coolant, I made this coolant bypass. You see this line, I'm gonna have to bend it out a little bit, it looks like. That is not gonna work. This is a tight, tight fit. And when I say that, I've got it in place, I bent this back just a hair. And so I think we're good there. I just hope I don't have a leak. I don't think I probably will, but golly, it's just really close. The front bypass, I had to knock a little bit down. The front was hitting it as well, but I think we're square now. Golly, all the sweat on it. All right, let's start some bolts down. I like to make sure, is it rocking? You know, is it rocking back and forth? It looks like it may a little bit, but there's nothing under it that's keeping it from going all the way down. Still got plenty of room there. So I think we'll grab the bolts and see if we can get it started. Now, they're saying to use thread locker on these. Guys, that makes me really nervous. This is an aluminum head. I just don't know. I may put just a hair on each one of them, but other than that, we're gonna drop them in and tighten them down by hand. Kind of starting in the middle and working our way out. We'll go through the sequence here in a little bit, but I don't feel comfortable putting thread lock. I feel like thread locker and a hex head on the top means it'll never come off, and I don't want that. So the sequence, we're on the passenger side here? So starting on the passenger side, the very middle one is 1. Directly across is 2. Back towards the back is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We're gonna start out in it's all inch pounds, but 45 inch pounds first pass, 89 inch pounds the second pass. I snug these down by hand, but now we're gonna get it to the 45. This thing sounds really like, I don't know, it makes noises. There's 45, it's not much. And I am using the bolts supplied with the intake. I didn't use the ARP ones. That is not, you can't even hear it, it clicks so quietly. But anyway, we're gonna go through and get this accomplished. And then honestly, guys, I'd like to put the fuel rail in just to make sure we don't drop any trash in it. Does that make sense? And so I'll cut back in when we're grabbing the fuel rail. Now that we've got the intake torqued down at the 49 or 45 and the 89, that's what it was. Guys, I need a new inch-pound wrench. Mine makes me a little nervous. Anyway, we need to grab our injectors and put those in, but before I do that, I'm gonna put a little bit of petroleum jelly around them. I think actually they're probably still got some on them. I'm gonna put a little bit more on them. Well, no, they're good. I was gonna try to put a little more on, but I think they're fine. This intake is cut to accept this fuel rail, okay? So you don't have to worry about it not fitting, only if you go to the 102. You can see the little cut in the center here? That. Oh, golly. Make sure that they're lining up. Those weren't lining up very well. Yeah, all right. Now I'm going to use the factory bolts for this. And then make sure we put the piece back here that holds your throttle cable. Once you get those 10s in, 89 inch-pounds, just like the intake, you can crisscross if you want. And then you have a nut and that bracket to hold the lines in place. And that you don't necessarily have to torque it down. Just make sure that it's facing, you know what? There we go. I was gonna say it's not gonna fit this intake, but it fits. All right. We'll torque it down. Now you're probably wondering, like, what about the evap solenoid? Well, guys, the evap solenoid will not, there's no provision in the intake for that. So you need to put, I'm gonna put mine back on, but there's not gonna be that neat little holder in the side like you had on the factory intake to put it. So we're just gonna have to take that bracket off and it's just gonna have to kind of set over here. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and plug all our injectors back in. And then guys, we had a 3-bar map sensor in the old intake, which, well, we're not doing any boost right now. So I'm gonna put my stock 1-bar back here in the opening. So it's actually tunable We're not going to run speed density. I'm going to run a mass airflow sensor since we're not going boosted. Just make all our connections back here. And then for the back, we obviously got to get our our hose that goes to the brake line, or the brake booster. We need, what else do we need here? That. Oh, we got to put this guy back on. This is for our knock sensors. Don't want to forget to plug that in. We don't want that error code. But I think that's it for right now. Let me grab my map sensor. This is making me crazy, all this sweat. Let's get the map sensor. Now this is the stock map sensor. It goes right there. Man, I may order a new one of those, guys. That seal is pretty freaking terrible. I just don't think that's, yeah, look at that. I'm gonna have to order a new, at least a seal for it. May not have to order a new sensor, but definitely gonna have to order a seal. And then this guy, I don't know what we're gonna do there because there's no, oh, there is a provision back here for, on the other side. There's a provision to plug the vacuum line on there. That makes life a little different. There we go. Okay. So there's our vacuum line. So all I need to do now is get the new seal for that and get our line hooked up for our brake booster. You can see I got the brake booster line on, but I also got a new seal for this guy, and that's gonna fit. Oh, I feel way, way better about that. It seems like there should be a way to maybe hold that in, like the factory had. I may, golly guys, I mean, maybe it'll be okay. Just seems like, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. It just seems like it's kind of loose, in my opinion. There's nothing really to zip tie around. Maybe it'll stay. Now we got our evap solenoid, which plugs in a little bit at it's a little bit different angle, as you can see. I don't even know that we're gonna reach that, to be honest with you guys. We may have to make a new line for it because it's not reaching. I don't think, we'll have to see when we get it up in the car, but we may have to make a new line for it. Look how close it is up here. This comes in at an angle towards the front. So I don't think that's gonna work, but we can address that once we go to plug the line in. You know, there's two lines. You've got your fuel line, then you got your evap line. So, and this is a hard line. There's not a lot you can do there. Let's snap this stuff back. And at this point, we have everything on it. You got that new map sensor, well, new seal. Nowhere to zip tie to. Hopefully it stays. It seems really loose to me. But yeah, we're making some progress here. I think the next thing we will do, since I don't have the throttle body yet, is, guys, I think we're gonna get this thing in the car. Is the next step. I got everything tightened down. Intake's tight. Fuel injector's in. I don't want to have anything that I have to hook up back here, so just make sure that all this stuff's good, and we are. It is a pain to get past this 92 millimeter. It's a pain to get past the stock LS6, but this is even thicker, so it's even harder to get your hands past it. So we want to make sure that everything's good before it goes in. Okay, now that we've got everything tightened down, we're gonna lift this thing up And guys, we are gonna attempt to put this motor in for hopefully the last time. Got everything on the back of the motor fixed. Let's give it a shot. Now that you can see we've got the engine in there, I did go ahead and hook up my brake lines. You guys saw that in an earlier video, my little T-fitting I made down there. So we need to torque the K-member down. I've got it ran up snug, but you need to make sure of a couple things. Make sure you get your washer in between this one. Remember, it ships with a washer. We need to get that. Make sure that's in when you're going together. But we need to torque these. Now, the instructions say to torque all 6 of them to 110. Well, I'm fine with torquing these to 110, but this factory one was only torqued to 92. So I think that's what I'm gonna do there. I just don't feel comfortable tightening that one to 110. But let's get all 6 of these, the 3 on both sides, torqued down. We got all those bolts torqued down for the K-member. So I went back here. You can see I've got my jack with a towel. I just lifted the back of the transmission and I just snugged these down, guys. I think I'm gonna have to put them back down at some point to help get the transmission lines hooked up on the passenger side, but for now I did just snug them up. I'm not going to talk about torque specs now because we're not really ready to torque it. So at this point I'm going to get my jack out of the way, and we're going to move on to, I'm going to go ahead and get the bolts for the bottom of the struts here. I'm going to get those started and torqued down, and we may go ahead and grab the rack and put in it as well. Got these put in. Look guys, these are 9/16 if you're using the Viking coilover like I am. They torque to 48 foot-pounds. So I've got that torqued down. The next thing, like I said, I think we're going to grab the rack and get it back in place. Remember, I unhooked it over there with the lines and everything and the pump because we went to that turn 1 style pulley. Gives us the ability to unbolt the pump from the front side. So I think I'm going to go grab it next and try to get it back in place. I don't know, a lot of times when you put the, you know, I've already had it on here, so I think those ears are kind of bent. So you may have some trouble getting that in, but here's what I will tell you. We need to come up from the bottom with the bolts because that's the only way you'll be able to do it the way we've got it installed now. But normally the factory has them down and you'd have to raise the motor in order to get the rack out. So reverse that. That way if you ever have a rack issue, you can pull the rack out without having to lift the motor off the mounts. Since I'm a one-man show out here, here's how I did it, guys. I put the actual rack on my jack, lifted this up since the lines are still connected, and we can get through the pulley, which I love, and torque those down to 18. Those are 13 millimeters, and then we can slide, hopefully, the rack into the actual K-member. Now that we have our bolt in, nut on the top, remember, like I said, this one over here, you'd have to pull the AC unit out, I believe. But either way, put them in from the bottom and torque those to 80 foot-pounds. Now, it's a 15 on the bottom, 18 on the top. So that makes it kind of weird, but actually wasn't too bad doing this by myself. I figured I'd have some issues, but all our lines are good. So I think at this point, guys, I may go ahead and put my steering shaft in. And so what I like to do is either get it started on the top. We need to make sure that the steering wheel's square. Be really careful not to move your steering wheel. You'll mess up your clock spring. So we need to get it started up top. That's generally where I like to start first and then push it on the bottom. But either way, make sure that you're using your factory bolt And other than that, make sure and put a little thread lock on that, like a little bit of blue thread lock on the bolt, but let's get it in place next. So you can see I got the steering shaft in. I started with the top, pushed it on, torqued that to 35 with some, like I said, blue Loctite. Same thing on the bottom, 35 foot-pounds. You can reach it. Generally, you can reach it around the alternator if you have a swivel. So it is snug down. So guys, I don't know what the next thing I want to move to. There's a spot that I want to cut that I wish I'd have done a long time ago on the passenger side for a pass-through. I've already got a pass-through hole for all the wiring, you know, that normally sets up here. You can see I've got a hole here, but I want to make it a little bigger because I want a little bit different piece there, at least I think. So we'll see on that. But I think maybe the next thing I want to do is maybe work on the throttle body. I just got it in, and so maybe we'll get it on next. I guess I didn't realize this, but there's a couple things we need to take off this intake. I went ahead and put it back in the box because I plan on using this intake on another project, but you'll see that in the future. We need to get these tins out because we're going to need something off the throttle body here. My new throttle body, which is a Nick Williams 92 millimeter, we have to swap the IAT and the motor over to the actual unit. I hate that. It's annoying to me, but look, got to do it. That's one thing. The other thing is we're going to need this guy, I believe, to attach our line. I'm not 100% on that. We're going to keep that to the side. And then the last thing is we obviously need our bracket for our throttle body cable. And then the new fast intake comes with new bolts to attach this. So we'll set that aside. But other than that, remember we had to take our EVAP piece off. I'm going to stick that back in here. And then this will be out of the way. All right, to get this off, it's a T15. Let's see if we can get it out of here. Been in there for years. Sorry for the noise, guys. It's raining, which we really need. Same T15 on the motor down here. Now here's what's odd. So there's that. This guy can only go one way, I believe. I mean, I guess it could go up. There's no instructions that came with this throttle body. So it went forward on this one. Also notice there's an O-ring in there and there's not one in here. I wonder if we need to swap that over. I bet we do because it's a really loose fit. Let's grab a pick, get that O-ring out of there if we can do it without damaging it. Clean it up a little. Probably should replace it. Man, this thing's nasty. Look at that. Probably won't run at all now. And it doesn't want to go in there with that O-ring on it, that's for sure. There we go. The O-ring just needed to be slid up to the top. I don't know. I'm going to go see if I can grab some instructions for this because I'm not feeling comfortable with the way it fits without an O-ring, but with the O-ring it's giving me troubles. We'll go ahead and get this off too. Now this has to face a certain way. And I think you got to be careful when taking this off, because if I remember right, it's spring loaded, but I may be wrong. I'm going to try to keep it square. You think for the amount of money you pay for a Nick Williams throttle body, it'd come with this. I really want to wipe this down too. You can see it's a certain way that it has to set. So we've got it on there. Let's grab a couple of these machine screws that comes with. I wonder if they're T15. That'd be nice if they were. No, they're smaller. Try a T10 on those. There we go. Actually seem like they may be a T15. They're kind of in between. So we got that piece swapped. I just want to make sure on this. So I found some instructions, and it actually only goes in one way, and yes, you do reuse that. It's just got to be all the way up against the top. So I pushed it all the way up against the very end of this, and now we can use, it only fits one way, so I was wondering which way this faced, but it can only face one way. So now we've got these on, and I think we're ready to put it on the car. We've already got the gasket in place. The intake came with that, which is good. And I don't know that there's no torque specs on this, guys, or at least it doesn't list any, so I'm just snugging it down until I can't turn it anymore. This is plastic, so you got to be a little bit easier on this. This is at least metal. All right. One of the things you'll notice is it doesn't have the throttle body, the coolant that goes through the throttle body, you know, like the stock one. So we're going to see if we can get this started. Comes with new machine screws, and they are 5mm. Make sure that you have a gasket there. If you don't, you need to get one. We'll get it started, and then we'll see what the torque specs are on it. Still got to get my throttle cable bracket in here too. Careful, I like to put these in by hand. Don't put these in with anything else, because you want to make sure that they're not cross-threading. Good looking throttle body. Thing's massive compared to the old one. Let's go grab some torque specs and see what it needs to be torqued to. 50 inch-pounds. That is not very tight, guys. I'm going to kind of alternate back and forth here. There it is right there. not very tight, but it seems to have closed up the gap. I don't think we're gonna have any leaks or anything. Now we need to grab our throttle cable holder and put it in place. And like I said, they supply new screws to put it in as well. Okay, so one thing I don't love is there's actually a screw, but then you have to put a bolt on the other side. I'm gonna put a washer on too, but it slides into the intake, but boy, is that gonna be fun trying to get that in there. Maybe the channel is, yeah, that's gonna be just a blast to try to get started. But either way, you gotta, and it's not gonna fit the washer, I don't think. No, the washer, never mind on the washer. I did put a washer on the outside, but we're gonna have to hopefully flip this over and get it started. Okay, so the channel does kind of hold the nut in place. I'm using a pick to kind of help. But there's no way you can get a wrench in there, so you're just gonna have to start it by hand. Oh, it's not as bad as I thought. Okay. It'd still be nice if there was just a threaded hole there, you know, like putting the throttle body on. I'll bring you guys in closer and show you once I get it tightened down, and I gotta grab the torque specs on it too. Hopefully you guys can see what I'm talking about with the, see how the nut sits in there. I had to actually put a small flat blade screwdriver in to tighten it up. 89 inch-pounds is what that goes to. So now we can get our throttle cable and our cruise control cable into the holder back there. Remember the one that sits on the intake? Get it threaded up here and hooked up to the throttle body. Got that throttle body cable hooked up, set in the holder, and we can also do this. Let's go ahead and hook up these two sensors. A little bit of a stretch there. That's not bad. All right, this one obviously mass airflow. This one IAT, we'll do that a little later. So the throttle body's complete. I'm gonna go ahead and put the spindle on this side, the brake and all. Guys, 79 foot-pounds are what the bottom bolt goes to. Let's see if we can get it in place. You can see I've got a jack underneath it. So we'll get that one started. Torque it down to 79, then get our cotter pin or our keeper in. That one doesn't act like it wants to thread on very well. Oh, it's all messed up. Okay, we'll grab another one. I have a couple over there. So 79 there, 38 at the top, 42 on the tie rod if you're gonna go ahead and hook it up. So let's get that accomplished. Trying to get the wires situated where they need to go. So I'm pushing these into the cabin, which is where they came from. Well, I was trying to show you what I was doing. I put the grommet back in, like I said, that goes in the car. My battery went dead, but I got the computer tray back in, which, guys, it's easier to put the tray in and then the computer into it. Then I cinched down the 7mm that go into it. So these guys here in the center, 7s. You can see I've got all my lines ran over here that came out. I took the ones that are silver wrapped, which are heat wrapped, go to your starter trigger, your O2 sensor, those go down the side there. So kind of underneath your heater core lines, these hard lines right here. So I routed those underneath there. We'll get to those later. But this area right here is what I was telling you I was gonna cut a little more, but guys, I actually have enough room. So what I used is one of these. I'll try to list these in the description. They come in pretty handy. What I did was I cut the center out and then cut a section out so it, you know, you can, there's a opening on the bottom, but you can barely see it. That's to keep all that junk off the top of the fender here. So now all of our plugs will be under here. And I know there's some controversy. People are like, oh, it's gonna get wet. Well, look, guys, we never drive this thing in the rain, so it's not gonna matter. And I've never had any issue with ones I did drive in the rain. So anyway, aside from that, there's a vacuum line that comes off the back of the intake that's gonna plug in right here. And there's another line that's coming from the front that's gonna plug in there as well. We'll get to that a little later as well. But I think now, since I don't have to cut anything or make this opening any bigger, I'm gonna go ahead and start routing my lines from the front and just making those connections under the fender. And then I can go ahead and get this spindle bolted and torqued down as well. So one of the next things I wanna do here is not required, especially right now, but I wanna do it because I have access to it. The motor's like stationary where it's not gonna move. And guys, that is, I wanna pin the crank. Now, initially, you know, with the turbos, I wasn't gonna have to do this, but if I ever put a Pro Charger on this, which is what I'm kind of thinking I'll do down the road, this doesn't have a keyway on the crank. So what's gonna happen is a lot of times the pressure of that pulley on the supercharger, which generally goes down in this area, it will spin that on the snout of the crank. So a lot of people do what they call a crank pin kit. And so I'm gonna do that while we've got it apart and I have this nice access spot with no radiator or anything in place. And so I'm gonna, like I said, do that. Here's what needs to happen though. In order to get the bolt out that we already torqued down, the ARP bolt, I'm gonna have to put my flywheel locking tool back there where the starter goes, which we don't have a starter in this thing yet because we took that starter that came with the turbo kit off. We're gonna put the stock one back in. But before we do that, we need to cinch this down. Guys, this tool comes in handy. I use it all the time, and it just keeps that flywheel or the motor from spinning over when you're trying to loosen or tighten like a harmonic balancer bolt. So let's get this in place. I'm gonna run that out. I won't show you guys that, but then when we get to the point where we're ready to pin it, I'm gonna show you guys kind of the process and what I'm using. Now, once we get the bolt out, you can see down in there, and guys, here's what I want to do. I want to stay away from the area where the ATI balancer has a spot for a keyway. I'd really like to go on the opposite side of that, if that makes sense. To me, I don't know, I guess you can do it wherever you want, but this is kind of how this kit is put together. Let me see if I can get my light. Actually, probably don't even need the light to look at it, but all right, so it comes with a bolt that obviously cinches this jig down and gives you drilling spots. Now this is a double pin option if you want to put 2 pins in, and then it's going to come with 3 pins because inevitably one's going to roll out of place and you have no idea where it's at, and then you can see it comes with the drill bit. Now this, you can see, is stepped because that is kind of how that works. So this will go on the inside, this stepped piece right here, and then we're going to cinch this down. I don't even know what size this is. It's a 14 millimeter. We're gonna cinch this down, and I'm only gonna put 1 pin in, okay? So I'm not gonna double pin it. We're gonna cinch this down on the opposite side. So like right now, my keyway opening is down. It's actually even with this, which makes it nice. And so I'm gonna try to go on the opposite side of that. And so I'm gonna cinch this down real quick. We're gonna get our drill, it comes with the drill bit, and get this drilled. Now guys, this is not gonna be the easiest thing in the world to drill because that crank is steel, and it's hardened steel, so it's nice that they send a bit. I think the bit is made to do this, but let's get this snug down and then we'll get started. You can see that I've got it set up in there, and so I'm going to drill this left hole, and we'll see how it goes. Well, it actually drilled a lot easier than I thought it would, guys. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to grab my vacuum. I'm going to vacuum that junk out of there, and then we're going to pull that jig out from the crank. We'll take a look at what we've got. So I've got it all vacuumed out, and you can see, hopefully you guys can see that hole on the other side. It drills it right in the middle of the pulley and the crank, helping to keep that from moving. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to see if I can get my pin in place. That ought to be fun since it's way back in there. But you do have to do some vacuuming, guys. Don't leave all the chips of, yeah, this may require me using a pair of needle nose pliers or something. Oh, there we go. There we go. I'm gonna have to use something to tap it the rest of the way in, but I drilled, guys, until my drill bit was just starting to come in to the inside of the pulley. You've just got enough room to do that. So once we get that done, we can go ahead and put some silicone on the original bolt and torque it back down. Got that thing in with some silicone on it, just like the ATI instructions say, torque to 230. That wasn't that bad. I've been putting that off for a little bit because I thought it was gonna be worse than that. Okay, I'm gonna move on to the wiring. And when I say wiring, guys, there is a power wire that comes up and hooks here, if you'll remember, and goes underneath. It grounds out on the passenger side block, and then it also hooks to your starter. That's your power for your starter. And I've got that wire sitting on my little cart over there, so I'm gonna grab it and kind of loosely fit it into place. Now this wiring I was talking about goes several different places. So you can see we hook here right? We got this little thing that's supposed to snap on there, or cover that, you know, to keep it from grounding out. So it goes there, you hook to the alternator here. That obviously is your battery connections and a ground, and then you have your starter and a ground that goes on the block. So I'm gonna loop that back into that passenger side, like I said, get it cinched down to the block. I wanted to get this in place because my AC stuff needs to go in, and it's just a little easier to access, you know, the ground on the side of the block without the AC compressor in the way. And we've already got the bracket for the AC compressor on, but we don't have the actual compressor itself in. So guys, I know it's starting to rain and you're gonna hear that in the background, but for AC, I could have used a stock one. You can't get a stock compressor anymore, unfortunately. So I went with the GDP unit, which look, I used this on my Formula, had no issues. It comes pre-filled with oil, but I cleaned up my bolts to bolt it to the car. I've also got my lines, and you can see I've got bags on them to keep junk out of them. But this, I bought this whole kit. So it comes with the dryer, the compressor, a new condenser for the front, and then all new seals. And so what I'm going to do is I want to put this line in place while we're going together, and you can see the junk that's coming out of it. Like I said, I taped this up back when we originally took this off. I didn't want any junk in these lines. Any kind of debris in the lines will cause issues. You can also see I've got the bolt there. But what we need to do on the back side is we need to match up. Well, actually, I've taken them off. But what we need to do is clean this really well. And then we need to find the actual seal that fits it best. Now it's gonna be one with a metal. I'm gonna make sure there's not one on the back of the compressor, but we need to go through this pack and find the one that fits, and it needs to fit very snug on these lines. And then we're gonna kind of place these lines in the car, and then I think I'll be able to reach back behind, especially now with this K-member, and get it snugged down after we get the compressor in. But let me see if I can find what fits, unless the compressor actually has them on it. I doubt that it does. Negative. At least I don't think so. There's a seal on the back to keep junk out of the compressor, I noticed. We'll get it open and see. Hopefully you guys can see what I'm talking about. They have the metal around them and the rubber on the inside. That's what we're looking for, the ones that fit snug. So I've got that. I'm gonna go ahead and place this in the car, and we're not gonna worry about hooking it up right now. I think it'll be easier to do it once we get the compressor in. Now for the compressor, you can see we've got two longer bolts which go obviously in the longer holes, and the shorter ones in the shorter. So let's get this thing cinched down on the car. I believe they're 15 millimeters. And I'm gonna probably, oh look, they were in the bottom of the bag, so they cinch multiples. Probably gonna cinch that down to about 37. That's generally what all the other accessories go to. So short bolts, I know the light's shining here, guys. Short bolts up top, 37 foot-pounds. Long bolts down at the bottom, 37 foot-pounds. Guys, we do have an electronic thing to plug in here, which we'll get to after a while. But the line set, okay, so I went ahead and started those. It's a 13 millimeter, and they only go in one way. So if you turn this, you can see this hard line comes out on this side of the pulley, the idler, or the tensioner. And then the other one comes up top. You can see it. And that piece is gonna be the long one that wraps around, kind of smushes up against the radiator and goes up to this connection up here. The other one, guys, you can see it kind of turns and comes down to the bottom where the condenser is gonna be. So I did torque the line set. Remember, we put new seals on it. I torqued the line set to 24 foot-pounds. That was the only torque spec I could find. So it is, the AC unit is all intact. All I have to do is route my little harness here and plug it in. Now that we got those lines all cinched down, we're gonna move up to these, and we're gonna get these old seals off, and we're gonna, I kind of wish that I would have kept, of course I guess we found the ones that fit, but we need to find the ones that fit here, because this is the next line I plan to put into place. Let's pull these off with a pick. I'm gonna clean up the mounting surface here really well. And then we are gonna grab a couple new pieces. All All right, now we know what size we need. We'll grab the size, clean that off, and get our next piece. Now that we got our new seals matched up, let's get this guy out of the bag and we'll get it into place where it goes. So remember, we got I think it's a 10 millimeter right here. We'll sandwich this thing down in there. These come with caps to make sure you don't get any junk on those either. Get that set down in there and probably go ahead and snug it down. I don't know the torque spec on it either, guys. I'm assuming you could probably do the same 24. That seems like a lot though on that. I'll probably just hand tighten it. Leaking oil everywhere, as you can see. He's cleaning it up for me. See those spots right there? But we got that cinched down. I'm not going to tighten that 10 millimeter until we get closer to needing this line hooked up. And because we may have to move it a little bit. But our next piece goes up against the firewall. This piece here, which you'll have a plug for. We're going to replace this guy here. So you need a pair of needle nose pliers to pull that out. And then we've got a new replacement piece somewhere over here. I don't know where. Oh, right here. So that guy will go in, same way this one comes out. I always suggest taking this out. Like I said, just needle nose pliers, pull straight out, but look how nasty that one is. So we'll toss that and put the new one in. Just make sure you get it in all the way. Got this hard line installed now. Once we got that new piece in, I went ahead and snugged it down. Of course, remember we put a new seal on that. So these guys are good and snug. This other one's gonna go to the top of the condenser. This line right here is going to loop up and connect here. I don't know if I'm quite ready to do that. I may want to wait. I probably could go ahead and do it. I just don't want to interfere with putting our radiator in, which I think, guys, I think our radiator will be next. I bought a new radiator. I'm going to drag it out of the package and show you guys that and the new condenser. I think that's our next step. Oh, one other thing I didn't talk about. I did go ahead and hook up our coolant lines for our heater core to the water pump, so you can see that that's installed now. But I think we'll get the radiator and the condenser next. Here is our new radiator. I bought a different brand that's a little thicker than the factory unit. The factory one's a 3/4 of an inch. This one is actually 1.25 inches, I think. It's an aftermarket company. It's been, I don't know, some people have had really good luck with it. We're gonna give it a shot. But I also, like I said, that kit with the compressor and all that came with the new condenser. So I'm gonna slide this into this right here, into these two clips. And I'm gonna have to track down the rubber pieces that fit on the bottom of this before we set it into place. So as I said, this just clips into the radiator. And to me, it's a little easier to do it here than in the car. That end was bent just a little bit. Should slide all the way down and seat. All right, I think it's in there. I may push down on it a little bit more. But I still need to find those rubber. There's a piece of rubber isolator that goes on both sides. I need to grab that real quick. Here are the two pieces we need. This for the, I guess this would be the driver's side. And then the passenger side, this guy goes in here like this. And the other one, I'm gonna set in the car because it kind of fits in the car first. It's got a piece to hold it. Got that set in there. Of course, nothing's gonna hold it up until we get our piece in place, but we could go ahead and hook up our AC line there, our one that comes in through the bottom if we'd like. Of course, we could grab some radiator hoses. I think I'll wait on the radiator hoses because we need to get our fans in, which I want to clean up a little bit before I just plug them into place. But yeah, it fits pretty good. Similar to what we did everywhere else, we're putting new seals everywhere. This thing seals up and we can get this out of place and plugged in and hopefully tightened up. That'll keep this somewhat in place. Now I've been cleaning on my fans. I didn't get crazy, but I did clean them up quite a bit. I want to see if we can slide them down into place and get them in the clips that hold them. Hopefully we can. I think we got started. There we go. We just want to make sure that they're seated in all the clips. I think this is going to be temporary. And when I say temporary, guys, if we end up going to a Pro Charger down the road, we'll be getting rid of these stock electric fans. That fits pretty good. All right. Now, guys, I may go ahead and grab the piece that holds this all up, this closeout right here. I don't know, I may just set it on there for now. I don't think I have the pieces that hold it in. For some reason, I think I'm missing those. I think I used them on my son's car. Yeah, anyway, now that we've got that, actually, though, we can go ahead and loop our other AC line up here, which I will do in just a second. It loops up through here and then obviously plugs in to the top. Once we get that in place, then we can cinch down this guy and kind of figure out, you know, whether it needs to go up or down or whatever. And it should actually set somewhere like that. I don't remember. Let's do that next, actually. Let's get this guy off here. I'm gonna have to find the nut that goes to that. Now, I set this on here for now, but there's some other stuff I want to do. So like I said, I don't have the bolts, and I'd like to find something a little dressier than the factory ones. And then there's it's like a sticker I need to, I don't think this is the one I had on it to begin with. Maybe it did have like a K&N sticker on there and I peeled it off, but anyway, we're gonna move our way to the front. I think we're getting close to finishing up on this video, but I wanna put a couple things on the front. One, the hood latch. Remember, when we cut for the turbo, it required us to cut this lower piece off. So we're not gonna have an attachment point down here, which isn't really gonna matter. I'm not, guys, gonna put my tank back in. I think I actually tossed it, the tank for the windshield wiper reservoir. I don't think I'm gonna put that back in. I don't think I have another one, and I think, like I said, I tossed the original one, but you wouldn't have been able to run that. The kit came with a different one. But what I do want to do is I want to get my hood latch back in place, and hopefully it's going to fit. I don't know why it wouldn't, but we'll give it a shot here. See, I've got the hood latch in place. I went ahead and hooked it up on the back, tightened the tins up top, and remember, I cut this one off on the bottom, but it's still very sturdy. And there's still more stuff that ties into it. So I'm not really concerned about that, but guys, I have been so excited to put this thing on for a while. I actually bought this a long time ago. This is a new front bumper support that has the fog lights built into it. It's way lighter than the factory one, and it comes with the bolts to put it in. So I do need to unhook some of my zip ties that I've got holding wires in place here. So yeah, clip this one, and we're gonna get this thing in place. That's gonna look really cool. One other thing you may notice is that it comes with all the hardware, but it has incorporated the pieces to hold the bottom of the bumper. So a lot of these, you know, a lot of people cut the bumper up and then they have nothing to hold anything in place, and the bumper's just flopping around on the bottom. I don't like that. So we are going to get a couple bolts started here, just get it in place. And I may end up having to take this back off to do some other stuff, I don't know. But for now, I really want to put it on here. It's all dusty. I've had this thing for, well, probably 3 years. I mean, that's about how long this thing's been apart at this point. Almost 4 years. So we'll get it clipped in. And then I'm going to put the, I might have to make those holes just a tad bigger, actually. Just fine. I'm going to make this one a little bigger. This bolt won't go through. It goes through here, but not this one. I'll just open that hole up a little bit. Once we got that opened up, it goes right in there. Of course, it's going to fight me. Get a couple of them started, won't be as bad. Once we get this cinched down, there's a couple other pieces I may throw on here before we end this video out. I don't know, I guess we could put the fog lights on it. See how they fit on those brackets. I think they'll fit just fine. I don't know, we'll see. not tighten this up. So you'll notice that I put a couple things off camera back on. Guys, I put the front wheels back on because I think I'm gonna set it on the ground relatively soon. I kind of adjusted out the tie rods. The wheels were, I don't know if you noticed, the brakes were facing quite a ways in. We don't have any adjustments. I mean, we're not gonna be able to get it into adjustment anywhere close until we get it sitting on the ground, figure out how, you know, we may have to go up with the coilovers. I don't know where it's actually at right now, but anyway, you can see I put my fog lights on. I just loosely fit those. I did a couple things off camera that I didn't show you. I got the PCM 10 millimeters in, tightened up a couple of things. And guys, look, most of the stuff just plugs in as far as electronics go. I haven't plugged really a whole lot in. I did plug the fans in. That harness was kind of looped out back from when I painted. I put the lower air deflector on, you'll notice that. But aside from that, I think we're gonna end the video right here. I did knock my headlights, I moved them back to the down position. I just wanted to make sure that my hood closed, and it does. We don't have any issues there. But yeah, we got quite a bit accomplished in this video, or at least I feel like we did anyway. So in the next video, we're gonna continue grinding it out on this thing. Look, I need to get it kind of on the ground in order to, we gotta run transmission lines. So my ultimate goal was to get it like rolling and then us get it up on the lift so I can kind of make my transmission lines and the mount and all that up on the lift. So I'm not having to like crawl underneath it. So that is the goal in the next video, is to maybe start plugging some more stuff in. I'm gonna leave the front bumper off for quite a while, probably until after the thing's tuned, as a matter of fact. But we are grinding it out and getting a little closer. So if you did enjoy this video, guys, like always, what do they need to do?
Subscribe.
Subscribe, but what else do they need to hit?
Ring that bell, like, comment, and stay tuned when we work on next.
Stay tuned, guys, to see what we work on next.